The security cameras captured everything. Karen Martinez storming through the gates with 3 police officers in tow, her voice echoing across the pristine pool deck as she pointed an accusatory finger at the lifeguard. "Arrest him!" she screamed, her face twisted with rage. But what she didn't know was that the quiet teenager she was trying to destroy had just inherited something that would change everything. In 20 minutes, her world would crumble and justice would arrive in the most unexpected way possible. The afternoon sun blazed mercilessly over Sunset Hills Community Pool, its rays dancing across the crystal-clear water that Marcus Rivera had been guarding for 3 summers running. At 19, he'd seen his share of difficult patrons, but nothing had prepared him for the human hurricane that was about to obliterate his peaceful Tuesday shift. Marcus sat perched on his lifeguard chair, red whistle hanging around his neck, watching a handful of residents enjoy the August heat. Mrs. Chen floated peacefully on her inflatable chair while the Patterson twins practiced their butterfly strokes in the lap lanes. The pool deck was immaculate. Marcus had arrived early to skim leaves and test chemical levels, just as he did every day. The tranquility shattered like glass when Karen Martinez burst through the iron gates. "Where is he?" Her voice carried across the water like a siren, causing every head to turn. She marched forward in her designer sundress and oversized sunglasses, her blonde hair perfectly styled despite the heat. Behind her trailed her son, Bryce, a sullen 15-year-old who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. Marcus straightened, in his chair, recognizing trouble when he saw it. Karen Martinez was Sunset Hills' most notorious resident, the woman who'd gotten 3 landscapers fired for improper hedge trimming, and once called the fire department because her neighbor's barbecue smoke was invading her airspace. "Ma'am, is everything all right?" Marcus called down, maintaining the professional tone his supervisor had drilled into him. Karen's head snapped toward him like a predator spotting prey. "You!" She pointed a manicured finger straight at him. "Don't you dare ma'am me, you little punk!" The other pool-goers began gathering their things, sensing the storm approaching. Mrs. Chen paddled quickly toward the shallow end, while the Patterson twins climbed out of the pool entirely. "I need you to lower your voice, please," Marcus said, calmly climbing down from his chair. "There are other residents trying to enjoy the—" "Lower my voice?" Karen's screech could have shattered windows. "My son was humiliated yesterday because of your abuse of power." Marcus felt his stomach drop. Yesterday. The incident with Bryce Martinez that had kept him awake half the night, wondering if he'd done the right thing. Bryce shuffled behind his mother, his face flushed with embarrassment. "Mom, can we just go home? Please?" "Absolutely not." Karen whirled around to face her son. "You were wronged, Bryce. This minimum wage, nobody thinks he can ban my child from his own community pool." "That's not what happened," Marcus said, his voice steady despite his racing heart. "Bryce was running on the wet deck after multiple warnings. When I asked him to slow down, he started pushing other kids in the pool without their consent. I gave him a 24-hour cooling-off period, which is standard protocol for—" "Lies!" Karen shrieked, her face turning an alarming shade of red. "You targeted my son because you're jealous. Jealous that he comes from a good family while you're just some nobody who'll never amount to anything." The words hit Marcus like physical blows, but he kept his expression neutral. He'd learned long ago not to let people like Karen see they'd gotten to him. "I have the incident report if you'd like to review it with the pool manager," Marcus offered. "Mr. Rodriguez will be here tomorrow morning." "Oh, you think you're so smart, don't you?" Karen stepped closer, her voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "Let me tell you something, boy. I know exactly who you are. Marcus Rivera, right? The scholarship kid from the wrong side of town. Your mother cleans houses for a living." Marcus's jaw tightened. His mother, Elena, worked harder than anyone he knew, often pulling double shifts to keep their small apartment and put food on the table while he attended community college. "My mother's work has nothing to do with this," he said quietly. "Doesn't it?" Karen's smile was cruel. "People like you think you can come into our neighborhood and push around our children. But you forgot one thing. I have connections, real connections." She pulled out her phone with theatrical flair, her acrylic nails clicking against the screen. That's right, I'm calling the police. You assaulted my son yesterday. Mom, he didn't touch me, Bryce mumbled, but Karen silenced him with a glare. Marcus felt the blood drain from his face. Ma'am, that's a false accusation. There are security cameras? Security cameras can be edited, Karen said, her voice sing-song with malice. Besides, who do you think they'll believe? A respected member of this community, or some punk kid who probably has a record? Other residents had stopped pretending not to watch. Mr. Henderson from the condo board stood near the gate, his phone out, clearly recording. The Patterson twins' mother ushered her children toward the exit, shooting Marcus a sympathetic look. 911, what's your emergency? The voice from Karen's phone speaker was loud enough for everyone to hear. Yes, I need police at Sunset Hills Community Pool immediately. There's been an assault. A lifeguard attacked my minor son and is now threatening me. Karen's voice suddenly became small and frightened, a masterful performance. Please hurry. I'm scared he might become violent again. Marcus's hands trembled as he reached for his own phone. He needed to call his supervisor, needed to document this, needed to... Don't you dare call anyone, Karen hissed, her mask slipping for just a moment. You move another muscle and I'll tell them you were reaching for a weapon. The next 15 minutes felt like hours. Karen paced the pool deck like a caged animal, occasionally shouting new accusations while Bryce sat miserably on a lounge chair, his head in his hands. Marcus remained perfectly still, knowing that any movement could be twisted into something sinister. When the police cars finally arrived, 3 of them, sirens wailing, Marcus felt his world tilting off its axis. Karen had called in an assault on a minor with ongoing threats, and the officers approached with hands near their weapons. Officers! Karen rushed toward them, tears streaming down her face in what Marcus now realized was probably a practiced routine. Thank God you're here. That boy attacked my son and has been terrorizing everyone at this pool. Officer Stevens, a tall man with graying temples, looked between Karen and Marcus. Ma'am, we need you to step back and let us assess the situation. But Karen was just getting started. His name is Marcus Rivera, and I have witnesses. Mrs. Patterson saw everything. Mr. Henderson has video. This thug thinks he can come into our community and... Ma'am, Officer Stevens' voice carried authority that finally penetrated Karen's hysteria. Step back, now! As the officers began separating witnesses and taking statements, Marcus caught sight of Mr. Henderson approaching one of the policemen. The older man's face was grim as he held up his phone. Officer, you need to see this, Mr. Henderson said quietly. I've been recording since this woman started screaming. Her story isn't matching what actually happened here. Karen's confident smile faltered for just a moment before reasserting itself. That man is lying to protect him. They're probably in cahoots. But Officer Stevens was already watching the video, his expression growing darker with each passing second. When he looked up at Karen, something had shifted in his eyes. Ma'am, this video shows you making false statements to a 911 operator. That's a crime. The color drained from Karen's face. That's not... He edited it somehow. The timestamp shows continuous recording, Officer Stevens said coldly. You want to try again? For the first time since her arrival, Karen Martinez was speechless. Marcus watched as her perfectly constructed world of lies began crumbling around her, but he had no idea that the real earthquake was still coming. His phone buzzed with a text message from a number he didn't recognize. Marcus, this is attorney Sarah Chen, Mrs. Chen's daughter. I've been watching from my office across the street. Don't say anything until I get there, 5 minutes. As Marcus looked up from his phone, he saw something that made his blood run cold. Karen had spotted the text, and her face was transforming from shocked to absolutely murderous. You think you're so clever, she whispered, her voice carrying a venom that made everyone nearby take a step back. But you have no idea who you're messing with. No idea. The officers were handcuffing Karen Martinez for filing a false police report when the real shock arrived. A shock that would change everything Marcus thought he knew about his life and deliver justice in the most unexpected way possible. The black Mercedes pulled up to the pool gates with the quiet authority of serious money. Marcus watched through the chain link as a woman in an expensive suit stepped out, her silver hair pulled back in a perfect chignon. She moved with the confidence of someone accustomed to being the most important person in any room. "That's Sarah Chen," Mrs. Chen called from the shallow end, her voice filled with pride. "My daughter, the attorney." She saw everything from her office window. But it wasn't Sarah Chen who made Marcus's world tilt on its axis. It was the elderly man who emerged from the passenger seat, moving slowly but deliberately toward the pool entrance. Marcus had never seen him before, yet something about the man's weathered face and careful gait struck him as achingly familiar. "Marcus Rivera?" The man's voice carried a slight accent, the same cadence Marcus heard in his own mother's speech when she was tired. "I'm Harold Blackwood." The name meant nothing to Marcus, but Karen Martinez went rigid in her handcuffs. Her face, already pale from her arrest, turned ashen. "Mr. Blackwood," Officer Stevens said, clearly recognizing the man. "I didn't expect to see you here." "Officer Stevens." Harold nodded respectfully. "I understand there's been some trouble involving my grandson." The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. Grandson. The pool deck suddenly felt like it was spinning beneath his feet. "That's impossible," Marcus whispered. "My grandfather died before I was born." "My mother told me." "Your mother told you what she had to," Harold said gently. His eyes, Marcus's eyes, he realized with shock, filled with decades of regret. "Elena was protecting you from a family that wasn't ready to accept her choices. But I've been watching from a distance, son. I've been watching and I've been waiting." Sarah Chen stepped forward, her briefcase in hand. "Mr. Rivera, I represent the Blackwood Family Trust. Perhaps we should discuss this privately." But Karen Martinez had found her voice again, and it came out as a screech that could wake the dead. "Blackwood? As in Blackwood Industries? As in the family that owns half this county?" She struggled against her handcuffs like a woman possessed. "That's impossible. This nobody can't be." "Can't be what, Mrs. Martinez?" Harold's voice was steel wrapped in silk. "Can't be my grandson? Can't be the heir to a fortune you've spent years trying to social climb your way toward?" The pool deck had gone silent, except for the gentle lapping of water against the sides. Even Bryce Martinez looked up from his misery, his eyes wide with understanding. Harold turned back to Marcus, and his weathered face softened. "Your mother was my housekeeper's daughter 35 years ago. When she fell in love with your father, my gardener, my late wife and I." He paused, pain flickering across his features. "We were different people then. Concerned with bloodlines and social standing, we made Elena choose between her family and ours." Marcus felt like he was drowning in air. "She chose my father." "She chose love," Harold corrected, "and I've regretted our ultimatum every day since. When your father died in that construction accident 5 years ago, I wanted to reach out, but Elena, she's proud, like her son. She refused any help." "Mom knows you're here?" Marcus's voice cracked like a teenager's. "I called her this morning, told her it was time." Harold's smile was sad but determined. "She's been working herself to the bone while her son, my grandson, has been earning his way through college, taking care of disabled swimmers on weekends, volunteering at the community center. Did you think I didn't know?" The pieces clicked into place with devastating clarity. The anonymous scholarship that had covered Marcus's tuition, the mysterious donor who'd funded the new wheelchair ramp at the community center where he taught swimming to kids with disabilities, the random pool inspection that had resulted in Marcus getting a raise last month. "You've been helping us," Marcus said, the words barely audible. "I've been trying to earn the right to be part of your life," Harold replied. "Your mother finally agreed to let me try." Karen Martinez's laughter was hysterical, bordering on manic. "This is insane! You people expect me to believe that this pool boy is a Blackwood? The Blackwoods own the bank that holds my mortgage. They own the company my husband works for. They... She stopped mid-sentence, her face going white as the implications hit her. Sarah Chen opened her briefcase with clinical precision. Mrs. Martinez, you've just been arrested for filing a false police report against Harold Blackwood's grandson. The same Harold Blackwood who sits on the board of Pinnacle Financial, where your husband Brad works as a senior loan officer. The sound Karen made wasn't quite human. The same Harold Blackwood, Sarah continued relentlessly, who owns the mortgage company that holds the loan on your house, and the same Harold Blackwood who, as of this morning, became the majority shareholder in Sunset Hills residential community. Marcus stared at his grandfather, in shock. You bought the neighborhood? I bought your workplace, Harold corrected. A young man shouldn't have to endure what you've endured today. Not in a community I have the power to improve. Officer Stevens cleared his throat. Mr. Blackwood, we still need to process Mrs. Martinez for the false report. Of course, Harold nodded, though I believe her husband should be informed of her arrest. Professional courtesy, you understand? Karen's struggles against the handcuffs became frantic. You can't! Brad doesn't know I'm here. He's at work. He's trying to get that promotion, and if his boss finds out his wife was arrested for what, Mrs. Martinez? Harold's voice was curious, almost innocent. For attacking my grandson? For filing false police reports? For racial harassment? He turned to Officer Stevens. I assume all of this will be in the public record? Standard procedure, Officer, Stevens confirmed. Arrest records are public information. Sarah Chen was typing rapidly on her phone. I'm just sending a message to Brad Martinez's supervisor at Pinnacle Financial. As a board member, Mr. Blackwood thought the company should be aware of potential character issues among their staff. No! Karen's scream echoed across the pool deck. You can't do this! I have children! I have a reputation! So does my grandson, Harold said quietly. Yet you tried to destroy both without a second thought. Mrs. Chen had climbed out of the pool and was wrapping herself in a towel, but her eyes were bright with something that looked like justice. Mr. Blackwood, my daughter told me about the security footage from your office building across the street. The angle shows everything. That happened here today, Harold nodded. We'll be sharing that footage with the police, of course, and with the homeowners association, and with anyone else who might find it educational. Bryce Martinez finally spoke up, his voice small and ashamed. Mom, why did you lie? Marcus. Didn't hurt me. He just told me to stop running by the pool. Karen looked at her son like he'd slapped her. Bryce, you don't understand. People like us, we have to what? Bryce's voice was getting stronger. We have to lie? We have to try to get innocent people arrested? Marcus has always been nice to me. Even when I was being a jerk yesterday, he just told me to be more careful. The officers were leading Karen toward their patrol car when she played her final, desperate card. This isn't over, she screamed at Marcus. You think because you found out you're rich, everyone's going to forget what you really are? You're still just a Mexican pool boy who... Harold Blackwood's voice cut through her tirade like a blade. Officer Stevens, please add ethnic intimidation to the charges. Sarah, please make sure this entire incident is documented for the discrimination lawsuit we'll be filing. As the patrol car drove away with Karen Martinez in the back seat, Marcus sank onto a lounge chair, his legs suddenly unable to support him. This is all real? He asked, looking up at the grandfather he'd never known existed. Harold sat down, beside him with a heavy sigh. I know it's overwhelming. We don't have to figure everything out today. But Marcus, I'd like to get to know you, if you'll let me. Marcus thought about his mother, working her third cleaning job this week. About the community college classes he'd been struggling to afford. About the kids at the community center who looked up to him, and the elderly residents like Mrs. Chen who treated him with respect, while people like Karen Martinez saw him as subhuman. Does this mean I don't have to work at the pool anymore? He asked. Harold's laugh was warm and genuine. Son, you can work anywhere you want, or nowhere at all. But something tells me you're not the type to stop working. I like the pool, Marcus said, surprising himself. I like helping people. I like teaching kids to swim. Then we'll make sure you can keep doing that, Harold said. On your terms. Sarah Chen approached them, her phone in hand. Mr. Rivera, I have some news about Mrs. Martinez's husband. Pinnacle Financial has decided to conduct an immediate review of all loan applications processed by Brad Martinez in the past year. Apparently, there are some irregularities they'd like to investigate. Marcus felt a chill. What kind of irregularities? The kind that suggest Mr. Martinez has been approving loans for friends and family members who didn't qualify, Sarah replied, and denying loans to applicants who did qualify but didn't fit his demographic preferences. The karma was almost too perfect to believe. But as Marcus watched his grandfather's satisfied smile, he realized that justice sometimes wore expensive suits and moved with the quiet. 3 hours later, Marcus sat in the back of Harold's Mercedes, still wearing his lifeguard uniform, watching the world transform outside the tinted windows. Everything looked the same, but felt completely different, like seeing familiar landscape through a new prescription. His phone had been buzzing nonstop. Texts from co-workers who'd heard about the arrest. Missed calls from his mother, Elena, who was apparently driving over from her cleaning job across town. And one particularly frantic voicemail from pool manager Rodriguez, who'd gotten wind that the new owner of Sunset Hills wanted to meet immediately. You don't have to change anything about your life right away, Harold said from the front passenger seat, as if reading his thoughts. This doesn't have to be overwhelming. But it already was overwhelming, especially when Sarah Chen's phone rang for the 10th time in 20 minutes. It's Brad Martinez, she announced, glancing at the caller ID. Should I? Harold nodded. Put it on speaker. Marcus should hear this. The voice that came through the car speakers was desperate, broken. Ms. Chen, please, I need to speak with Mr. Blackwood. There's been a mistake, a terrible mistake. Mr. Martinez. Sarah's voice was professionally neutral. What can we do for you? It's about my wife, Karen. She made a mistake today. She was stressed about Bryce, about the pool incident, and she overreacted. But she didn't mean any harm. She's a good woman, she just… Mr. Martinez, Harold interrupted, his voice cutting through the rambling excuses. Are you aware that your wife racially harassed my grandson, filed false police reports, and attempted to have him arrested on fabricated assault charges? The silence stretched so long that Marcus wondered if the call had dropped. Your grandson? Brad's voice was barely a whisper. Marcus Rivera, the young man your wife called just a Mexican pool boy while trying to destroy his life for doing his job. Oh God. The sound was like a man watching his world collapse in real time. Mr. Blackwood, I swear I had no idea. Karen said there was trouble at the pool, but I never would have. Please, I have children, I have a mortgage, I've worked at Pinnacle for 12 years. Sarah Chen's voice remained steady. Mr. Martinez, the Loan Review Board has discovered some interesting patterns in your approval history. Would you like to explain why you denied a home loan to the Washingtons, a couple with perfect credit scores, while approving a loan for your brother-in-law who was 3 months behind on his car payments? Marcus watched the landscape roll by as Brad Martinez's life imploded over the phone. Part of him felt sick about it, but then he remembered Karen's face, twisted with hate as she screamed about his mother, and the sick feeling faded. That was just coincidence. I can explain. Can you explain the Hendersons, the Patels, the Johnsons? Sarah's voice grew sharper with each name. All denied loans despite qualifying. All families of color. All while you approved subprime loans for friends and family members. I need a lawyer, Brad whispered. Yes, Harold said quietly. You do. The call ended, leaving the Mercedes in heavy silence. Is that what justice looks like? Marcus asked, staring out at the familiar streets of his neighborhood. Harold's neighborhood now. Sometimes, Harold replied. But real justice is what comes next. They pulled up to Marcus's apartment complex, a tired-looking building with chipped paint and a parking lot full of potholes. Harold looked up at the 3-story structure with the expression of a man seeing something that physically pained him. You grew up here, he said. It wasn't a question. It's not so bad, Marcus said defensively. Mom keeps it clean. The neighbors look out for each other. I'm sure they do. Harold's voice was gentle. I didn't mean to imply. Marcus, I don't want to change what's good about your life. I want to build on it. Elena Rivera was waiting in the parking lot, leaning against her 15-year-old Honda Civic still wearing her cleaning uniform. When she saw Harold step out of the Mercedes, her face went through a complex series of emotions: recognition, old pain, defiance, and something that might have been relief. Elena. Harold's voice was soft, careful. Harold. Her accent was thicker when she was emotional. Marcus noticed. You look old. We both do. Harold's smile was sad. Thank you for letting me come. Marcus looked between them, seeing the weight of 35 years of separation, of choices made and regretted. His mother's pride, which had kept them poor, but dignified. His grandfather's regret, which had finally overcome his own pride. Mijo, Elena said, pulling Marcus into a fierce hug. Are you all right? I heard about the crazy woman, about the police. I'm okay, Mom. Marcus held her tight, breathing in the familiar scent of industrial cleaner and the vanilla perfume she wore on special occasions. But there's a lot we need to talk about. They went upstairs to the small apartment, 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, furniture that was clean but worn. Harold looked around with the careful attention of someone trying to understand a life he'd missed, while Elena bustled around making coffee despite the summer heat. Sit, she commanded Harold, gesturing to their second-hand couch. You want to talk? We talk. Sarah Chen had stayed in the car, giving them privacy, but her phone was visible through the window as she continued coordinating the legal assault on the Martinez family's life. Elena, I owe you an apology, Harold began. More than one. 35. Years worth. You owe me nothing, she said sharply. I made my choice. I chose love over money. I chose my family over yours. And you were right to. Harold's voice was heavy with regret. But I should have made it possible for you to have both. Marcus sat between them, feeling like a bridge between 2 worlds. Mom, why didn't you ever tell me? Elena's hands shook slightly as she poured coffee. What was I supposed to say? That your grandfather was rich but didn't want us? That we weren't good enough for his family? She shot Harold a look that could have melted steel. I wasn't going to poison you with that. I deserved it, Harold said quietly. The poison. But Marcus didn't deserve to grow up thinking he had no family beyond you. He had family, Elena said fiercely. He had me. He had his father until the accident. He had this community. Good. People who cared about him. Like Mrs. Chen, Marcus said, thinking of the elderly woman who'd always slipped him extra cookies when he helped with her pool exercises. She knew, didn't she? Harold nodded. Margaret Chen worked as a secretary at my law firm 40 years ago. When you started working at the pool, she recognized the resemblance and called me. She's been sending me pictures of you for 3 years. Marcus felt the world tilt again. Pictures? Teaching those kids with disabilities to swim, helping elderly residents with their pool therapy, working double shifts to help pay for your mother's car repairs. Harold's voice grew stronger. You think I didn't know about the time you used your own paycheck to buy pool equipment for the community center? Or when you gave your Christmas bonus to the family whose house burned down? Elena was crying now, tears streaming down her face. Mijo, you never told me about the Christmas bonus. It wasn't important, Marcus mumbled, embarrassed. It was everything, Harold said. It told me that despite growing up without me, without my money, without advantages, you became exactly the kind of man I hoped my grandson would be. The sound of sirens in the distance broke the emotional moment. Through the window, they could see police cars racing toward the other side of town, toward the expensive neighborhood where the Martinez family lived. Sarah Chen appeared at the door, her expression grim. Mr. Blackwood, we need to talk. It's about Brad Martinez. They gathered around Elena's small kitchen table as Sarah opened her laptop. Brad Martinez didn't just come home to find his wife had been arrested, she began. He came home to find FBI agents waiting with a warrant. Apparently, the loan irregularities were just the tip of the iceberg. Harold leaned forward. What kind of iceberg? The kind involving money laundering, fraudulent loan applications, and a mortgage scam that's been running for 3 years. Brad Martinez wasn't just discriminating against minority applicants, he was actively funneling approved loans to a network of shell buyers who were flipping properties and defaulting intentionally. Marcus felt dizzy. How much money? $12 million so far, and it gets worse. Karen Martinez wasn't just a spoiled housewife having a bad day. She was the one recruiting the shell buyers. Her social connections, her knowledge of who had money and who was desperate. She was the architect. Elena set down her coffee cup with shaking hands. They were criminals. High-level financial criminals who used racism and classism as a cover, Sarah confirmed. The FBI has been investigating them for 8 months. Your incident today, Marcus, gave them the excuse they needed for the arrest that broke everything. Open. Harold was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was thoughtful. So, Karen Martinez didn't just attack my grandson because she's a bigot. She attacked him because she's a criminal who couldn't afford to have anyone looking too closely at her family. The irony, Sarah said, is that if she'd just let the pool incident go, if she'd accepted that her son was disciplined fairly, none of this would have come out. The FBI might have taken years to build their case. Marcus laughed, but there was no humor in it. She destroyed herself trying to destroy me. No, Harold said firmly. She destroyed... 6 months later, Marcus stood in front of a room full of reporters, no longer wearing a lifeguard uniform, but a suit that cost more than his mother used to make in 3 months. The Blackwood Foundation's new headquarters gleamed behind him. A building he'd helped design, with accessibility features he'd insisted on after his years working with disabled swimmers. The Rivera Blackwood Community Centers will offer free swimming lessons, financial literacy classes, and legal aid to underserved communities, he was saying, his voice steady and confident. My grandfather always said that privilege without purpose is just wealth. I want to make sure that's never true of our family again. In the audience, Elena Rivera sat in the front row wearing a dress Harold had bought her, not because she'd asked, but because he'd finally learned to offer help in ways that preserved her dignity. Beside her sat Mrs. Chen, whose daughter, Sarah, had become the foundation's legal director. But it was the figure in the back of the room that would have shocked anyone who remembered the events at Sunset Hills Community Pool. Bryce Martinez, now 16 and working part-time at one of the new community centers, raised his hand. "Mr. Rivera," he said, his voice carrying none of the sullen entitlement it had possessed a year ago. "What do you say to people who think you're only doing this because of what happened to your family?" Marcus smiled. It was a question they'd rehearsed, but the answer was genuine. "I'd say that pain can make you bitter, or it can make you better. My family chose better." After the press conference, Marcus found Bryce stacking pool equipment in the storage room, the same job Marcus had done at his age, but now with full benefits, college tuition assistance, and a clear path to management. "How's your mom doing?" Marcus asked. It was a question he asked every month, and every month the answer got a little better. 2 more years, Bryce said quietly. Her lawyer thinks she might get early release if she keeps cooperating with the FBI. Dad, he shrugged. Dad's got 8 more years minimum. Karen Martinez had pled guilty to racketeering, money laundering, and civil rights violations. The federal prosecutor had been clear. Her attack on Marcus hadn't just been racist harassment. It had been an attempt to silence someone who might have noticed irregularities in the community pool's financial management. The Martinez crime. Ring had been skimming money from community associations across 3 counties. "You know she writes to me sometimes," Marcus said. Bryce looked up, surprised. "Really?" Apologizes. Over and over. Says she wants to make amends when she gets out. Marcus sat down on a stack of pool noodles. "I think she means it. Do you forgive her?" It was the question Marcus had been wrestling with for months. Karen Martinez had tried to destroy his life, had attacked his mother's dignity, had weaponized racism and classism in ways that could have left him with a criminal record and no future. But she'd also inadvertently led him to his grandfather, to his heritage, to resources that let him change hundreds of lives. "I'm working on it," Marcus said honestly. "Forgiveness isn't the same as forgetting, or pretending it didn't matter." Bryce nodded. "She talks about you in her letters to me. Says you could have had her killed in prison, that you have that kind of money and connections now, but instead you hired the lawyer who got her the plea deal." Marcus had never told anyone about that. "She's still your mom. She's a felon who tried to frame an innocent person for assault." "She's both things," Marcus said. "People are complicated." That evening, Marcus drove his new car, a modest Honda despite Harold's protests, to the old Sunset Hills community pool. He'd bought the entire complex from his grandfather for $1, then spent $2 million renovating it into a state-of-the-art aquatic center that served 3 surrounding communities. The pool where Karen Martinez had screamed at him was now the centerpiece of a facility that offered free swimming lessons to kids from low-income families, water therapy for seniors, and adaptive swimming programs for people with disabilities. The lifeguard chair where he'd sat that day was still there, now occupied by Maria Santos, a 19-year-old from his old neighborhood who was working her way through nursing school. "Evening, boss," Maria called down. "How'd the press conference go?" "Don't call me boss," Marcus replied automatically. "And it went fine. Any problems today?" "Just Mrs. Patterson asking if we're really going to name the new therapy pool after you." Marcus laughed. "What did you tell her?" "That it's being named after your mother. Elena Rivera Memorial Therapeutic Pool." The name still made Marcus's chest tight. Elena had lived just long enough to see the groundbreaking ceremony, to see her son accept his inheritance not with greed, but with purpose, to see Harold finally become the grandfather she'd always hoped he could be. The heart attack had been sudden, massive, unstoppable, but she'd died knowing her sacrifices had meant something. "She would have loved this," Marcus said, looking out over the pool where a group of elderly residents were doing their evening water aerobics. "She did love it," Maria corrected. "Remember? She came to every planning meeting, even when she was getting sick, kept saying, 'Mijo, you make sure the poor kids get the same as the rich kids.'" Marcus nodded, remembering. His mother had lived long enough to see Karen Martinez sentenced, to see the FBI recover most of the stolen money and return it to the communities it had been taken from, to see her son transform from an anonymous lifeguard into someone who could move mountains. His phone buzzed with a text from Harold. "Dinner at 7? Mrs. Chen is making her famous dumplings." At 82, Harold had embraced his role as grandfather with the same intensity he'd once brought to business. He'd moved out of his mansion and into a modest house 3 blocks from Marcus's apartment, spending his days volunteering at the community centers and his evenings learning to cook Elena's favorite recipes from Mrs. Chen. "Tell him I'll be there," Marcus texted back, then looked up to find Sarah Chen approaching the pool deck. "We got the final FBI report," she said without preamble. "Want the good news or the incredible news?" "Start with good. The Martinez operation was bigger than we thought. 18 million in recovered funds. The foundation's community development budget just doubled." Marcus whistled. "And the incredible news?" Sarah's smile was triumphant. Karen Martinez led them to a network of similar operations in 12 states. Her cooperation has resulted in 47 arrests and the recovery of over $200 million in stolen community funds. The FBI is calling it the largest mortgage fraud bust in federal history. Marcus sat down hard on a pool chair. 200 million? Money that was stolen from communities exactly like this one. Housing developments, community centers, youth, programs, all of it being skimmed by people who looked like upstanding citizens but were criminals hiding behind respectability. The irony was staggering. Karen Martinez, in her desperate attempt to destroy one young man she saw as beneath her, had inadvertently exposed a criminal network that had been stealing from communities across the country. "There's more," Sarah continued. "The Justice Department wants to make your foundation the model for how recovered funds should be distributed to affected communities. They're talking about the Rivera-Blackwood model becoming federal policy, Marcus thought about his mother, working 3 jobs to keep them afloat while criminals in expensive houses stole money meant for communities like theirs. He thought about Karen Martinez sitting in federal prison, probably still not understanding that her downfall had come not from attacking someone powerless, but from attacking someone who turned out to have the power to expose the truth. What does Harold think about all this? He thinks your mother would be proud. That night, as Marcus sat around Mrs. Chen's dining table with Harold and a handful of elderly neighbors who'd become surrogate family, he reflected on the strange mathematics of justice. Karen Martinez had tried to destroy him because she couldn't stand the idea of a young Latino man having authority over her son. In doing so, she'd not only destroyed herself, but exposed a criminal network that had been stealing from Latino communities, Black communities, immigrant communities, all the people she'd looked down on. You know what the strangest part is? Marcus said as Mrs. Chen served her famous dumplings. What's that, mijo? Harold asked. He'd started using Elena's nickname for Marcus, and somehow it sounded natural in his voice. If Karen had just let it go, if she'd just accepted that Bryce was disciplined fairly and moved on, she'd still be free. Her husband would still have his job, their kids would still have their college funds. The FBI might never have caught them. Evil contains the seeds of its own destruction, Mrs. Chen said philosophically. Your mother used to say that. Harold nodded. Elena was a wise woman. She knew that doing the right thing, even when it's hard, even when it seems like you're losing, that's what builds character. That's what builds legacy. Marcus looked around the table at these people who'd become his chosen family. Harold, who'd spent the last years of his life trying to make up for 35 years of absence. Mrs. Chen, who'd secretly watched over him for years and brought his family back together. Sarah Chen, who'd turned legal expertise into a weapon for justice. Even Maria Santos, the new lifeguard, who joined them for dinner and was learning that community was more than just geography. I still think about her sometimes, Marcus admitted.